How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, we're going to discuss rookie confidence, the rise, fall, and growth of the first few months. Now, guys, I did a quick little show on this the other day. It was about 8 minutes. It kind of went through just an article I wrote. This is going to be a discussion. I'm going to have my guest today, Joe Paponio, and we're going to kind of break it down the first 6 months. Now, guys, granted, I know that there's a lot of rookies that they enter the profession and then eventually it does become a bit overwhelming and they can't push past the doubt. So this episode will hopefully guide you through that moment, but also remind you that you are not alone. That's the key. So before we bring my guest on, guys, don't forget I have books on the market. If you want to check out 2 books I have on Amazon, I have Inmate Manipulation Decoded, as well as Breaking Boundaries. Both of them are available on Amazon. Link to them in the description. And I also have multiple books on Blue 360 Media, anything from leadership to being a rookie. I have a new book coming out for rookies as well that I believe is in the process or it's getting ready to be a pre-order. So feel free to check out Blue 360 Media and check out what books I have. They just put my name in the search engine and my books will show up. All right, Joe, you mind? Hello, Joe, first off. How are you?
What's happening, Anthony?
Good. You mind introducing yourself, please?
Yes, sir. My name is Joe Pomponio. I'm a retired lieutenant from the Texas Department of Corrections of 29 years. Currently working as an assistant jail administrator in our local sheriff's department in the jail division and a panel member here for Tier Talk.
Now, Joe, I thought this was a great dialogue because obviously everything in corrections has to be balanced. You don't sit on extremes, and confidence is one of them. You don't want to be overconfident on one side or you don't want to lack confidence on the other. So you got to kind of be balanced even on day one, even within that first minute. So I definitely think this dialogue is going to be a good dialogue. And Joe, my biggest concern right now, Joe, there are rookies that are coming in and realizing that this profession isn't for them. Now, granted, there are some that it's just not for them. I get it. But there are some that may get overwhelmed and they may feel it's not for them because they may feel that they can't handle the challenge. And that's what this episode is for. That's who this episode is for. It's for the people that are doubting themselves, but they still want to do it. We're going to try to help you push past that doubt. But that's a concern we have right now, right, Joe? We have people that we're getting them in the profession, but within a week or two, they're resigning.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You have two types of individuals when they first come in. You get the gung-hos and you get the underconfident. And, I understand both sides of that gamut. The ones that got pumped and come through the academy and flying colors, top of their class, ready to change the world. They come in pretty hard. And then you get the ones that go through the academy, they were kind of unsure before they went through the academy, for various reasons. And then once they come out of the academy, they hit their unit and, they find out that life is a little bit different. It's different to see it in its reality. It's different to be there hands-on versus being in a classroom and soaking the knowledge in. And I totally understand that being underconfident, it causes stress. It causes worries. The biggest thing, that I used to tell the cadets is to stick it out. Make sure, I always try to put them with somebody who, built their confidence up at the same time, as well as teaching them and mentoring them. And, they say if you make it past the first year, it's pretty much downhill. Anything and everything that's going to happen is going to happen within that first year. You may experience your first fight, your first altercation, your first homicide, suicide. And, some people can push past it. Some people can't. And, we understand that this job is not for everybody. We do. I totally understand it. And it's it's the type of profession that you really don't know what you got until you get in there. It's going to test your resolve. It's going to test your stability. It's going to test your endurance. And, and sometimes, like we said, the job is not for everybody. And that's totally understandable. There's no shame in that game. I've seen the hardest of people come in. I remember totally. I had a guy that I was going through the academy with, and he was on terminal leave from the military as a first sergeant. And we went through female segregation housing, and he got hit with a used maxi pad by one of the seg inmates, and he laid his stuff down and never came back. So there are things that transpire within the corrections profession. It's all how you process it, having a support system. And I'm not just talking about, your fellow cadets that you went through the academy with. I'm talking about, your mentor, your FTO officer, the shift supervisors. You got to have a support system there to help you get through it.
Yeah. And guys, you got to realize at the very beginning, confidence is going to fluctuate. I mean, that's going to happen multiple times throughout your career. You're always going to, if you're looking to get promoted, you'll be trying something new, but it does lessen in that fluctuation, because I think in corrections, when you first enter into this profession, there's a lot of ambiguity. I don't really think there's a comparable experience at this level. But again, when you move up in the profession or when you try something new, your confidence will still fluctuate, but you'll be fluctuating from a stronger foundation. Whereas a rookie, you don't have it yet. So this is what we're trying to do now, is to help you try to understand those fluctuations because they are going to happen, and they're perfectly normal, and we've all gone through it. And then I also want to kind of break down how that first 6 months is going to be, which also includes the breaking point. So the breaking point is when it's happening to you. This is what's happening to you in the moment, and the turning point is when you decide how you're going to respond. That's the key. I'm reading a very good book. It's actually my second go around. William Young did a video recently, and he mentioned the book, and I remember reading it a while ago, so I wind up rereading it again. And it's Viktor Frankl's A Man's Search for Meaning or something like that, but it's Viktor Frankl's book. And what he basically says is that when you can't change a situation, you got to learn to change yourself. And that to me resonates. So in these first 6 months, that's kind of what the battle is going to be, because you have to discover who you are, but also you're dealing with things that you never dealt with before. So you're going to have to try to find a way to successfully respond to that. And what Viktor Frankl focuses on is meaning. That's the key. If you have a strong why, you can deal with the hows. So I'm a big believer in that. So if you enter this profession and you're connected to the work because it has a greater meaning for you, a greater service, then usually that's going to help you push through doubt, push through insecurity, push through the challenges of this profession. But if you don't have any meaning, or it's superficial at best, then obviously doubt will settle in. You're probably not going to be willing to keep on dealing with the challenges ahead, because what's the end result? What am I going to really get from it? Where for me, I found meaning in this profession right from day one. And that's why, by the way, usually when you have that greater meaning, that higher service, you don't expect it to be easy. So you got to know that that's why it is a greater service, because the challenges are hard. So confidence I have here real quick, and we'll break into it, is confidence is crucial in corrections. Too much can lead to reckless decisions, while too little can make rookies hesitate in critical situations. And then how confidence or lack of it affects officers' safety, team cohesion, and inmate interaction. So one of the key insights before we get into this first part is confidence is a double-edged sword. Too much or too little can both lead to mistakes, which we talked about. Everything in corrections is always going to be about balance. Then you got the correctional environment is designed to test new officers. So how they respond determine their growth. And a rookie's ability to adapt quickly impacts their safety, credibility, and career longevity. So the first thing I want to talk about is going to be the rookie's mindset. So we're looking at the confidence within the first days or weeks. So I kind of, as I was breaking this down, Joe, and I would love maybe to get a little personal, share a story with you, and then hopefully you can share one with me, is I believe there are going to be two types of rookies that are going to come in. Now, nothing's all inclusive, but for the most part, you're going to have one set of rookies that are going to come in that are going to enter the job very overconfident. So they think they know everything based on academy training or past experience, whether they're military, security, law enforcement. They're going to expect respect from the inmates without earning it. That could be because they're leaning on the uniform, leaning on the badge, whatever it is. That's going to be a wake-up call. And we'll talk about expectations versus reality. And then they're going to assume fellow officers will immediately treat them as equals. Then you got the nervous rookies who feel overwhelmed and unsure of how to apply what they've learned. So remember, guys, you got the academy. If you're going to the academy first, they're going to give you some level of knowledge, but the real-world application of that knowledge is going to be a lot different. But I still believe the academy gives you a good foundation. And then when you go to the field, when you actually in that facility, then your field training officers will work with you and try to teach you how to apply that knowledge within the parameters of that facility. People that are nervous will be hesitant to speak up or take initiative, and then they'll second guess their decisions, leading to hesitation in high pressure situations. Now, the common rookie assumptions, the common concerns here is rookies' assumptions versus reality. So rookies may have an expectation that inmates will listen because of the badge, and reality is inmates test new officers immediately. Expectation a rookie may have is that academy training prepared them for everything, and the reality is real-world application is completely different from controlled training environments. And I would love for Joe to explain that in a second. And then the key insights that we're going to dive into in this section right away is confidence without competence is dangerous. Training is just the foundation. Real learning happens on the job. The facility will challenge every assumption rookies bring in. Adaptability is more important than initial confidence. And rookies must learn that respect is earned, not automatically given. Hey, Joe, I want to dive into this part real quick. Academy training, the expectation is there will be some people that believe that the academy training is going to be enough. They're going to be ready to go. And I love the reality when it says real world application is completely different from controlled training environments. I mean, that's a shift, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Being in a classroom environment, learning and understanding the basics of what you're going to be doing versus being in the position where actual live application is totally different. You said just a minute ago, confidence, what was it? The confidence.
Oh, confidence without competence is dangerous. Training is just a foundation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Confidence without competence, to me equals arrogance, which to me means that you're coming in gung ho. You think you know it all. And I'm here to tell you, that the academies are there to give you the basic foundation blocks so that you can understand the environment that you're going to go into. There is no amount of academy training that is going to substitute any kind of real world application on the job. Confidence is a good thing as long as it's controlled confidence. You have to be confident in yourself, first of all, before you can be confident in what you're going to do. If you're not confident in your own abilities, it's going to project. The inmate population is going to see it. Your coworkers are going to see it. And it's going to cause you issues down the line. Going into a real world application. And I know for me, the first day I rolled into an old red brick penitentiary that was built in 1902 and hearing them gates slam for the first time, it shook me because that's the first time I ever heard that sound. And, the biggest thing you can do as a rookie officer is establish a line of communication. Using your communication skills is what's going to get you respect, because you're not going to have respect right off the bat just because of a uniform. And I used to tell other supervisors too, just because what you have on your collar will not, keep you from being assaulted. The rank doesn't make the person makes the rank. And it's the same thing for officers. The uniform doesn't make you, you make the uniform. So, going in there with confidence, good communication skills, confidence in your ability, confidence to project your communication skills. That's what's going to get you through your first few weeks on the job. The academy itself is a great learning tool. It's great for foundation. It gives you all the, what to's and how to's and what ifs and, that kind of scenario, but it does no justice versus stepping into a facility for the first time.
Yeah, and guys, remember, confidence comes from experience. So again, if you're just entering this profession, you're not going to have the experience to really truly draw internal confidence. So you're going to look around you. You're going to look at, where your support is, and they're the ones that are going to help you up, especially if you go through moments that cause you to doubt yourself, because they're going to have to be constructive and help you keep going, because you're not going to have enough experience to rebuild yourself. You're going to need to know that I got support that can help me push through it, until later on when you develop experience, and then you kind of brush off this doubt, because you have enough positive experience to negate the negative. But I want to mention something for me, Joe, and I would love to get your story on this too. I didn't come in overconfident, and be honest with you, I took a second to think about this, because I remember looking. So I look back at my career every time I do an episode like this, and actually it's pretty cool to look back a little bit and see myself as this young gun, a little bit detached, a little bit to some extent, because I'm not actually living it in the moment. I'm trying to see myself as best as I can from like however many levels up, and with the knowledge I have now that I didn't have then. And I will actually say I definitely didn't come in overconfident. I thought I was a bit balanced, but when I felt I made a mistake, because I'm thinking of one of my first concerns I had was with account, and I actually shared the story a while back, I became extremely nervous. So I don't think I came in overconfident. I came in, if anything, I would like to say balanced, but I was leaning towards more of lack of confidence. And the reason why is even the officers, for the most part, I had officers that gave me support. But I remember this one incident where I was trying to find out where the inmate was. That was my initial concern with taking my first count, was even though they taught me, I guess, whatever it was in the academy, when I was doing my first count unsupervised, I couldn't remember all the places the inmate could possibly be. All the different details, or the courts, or just hospital trip, or whatever other reason that. Or maybe they were taken off the count because the court, the county admitted them for the day, or whatever it is, or the hospital, whatever it would be. So I remember, being nervous because I didn't know where the inmate was, so I was calling the areas where the out count would be, just to kind of, maybe match up my numbers. And I remember one of the first officers I called was the main gate, and the main gate would tell me if I had any court trips out or hospital trips, anything that was outside the facility. And the person quickly found out, like, what are you calling for? I just want to verify my count. Well, you should know that already, and hung up. Now, I disagree with that on so many levels, actually looking back at it now, because that's a great way to verify. We should have communication like that, and we should be able to make sure that things are consistent, the count of the unit versus the out count. But with that said, at that moment, I don't think this officer was even trying to try to educate me or challenge me a little bit. I think the officer just didn't want to be bothered by rookies. So that actually forced me, believe it or not, because I had to get that count, and they were calling me, hey, Ganji, where's your count? Where's your count? And I'm sitting there in the middle of the unit trying to figure it out. And then the inmate winds up coming up, and out of desperation, I accept the answer she gives me, which actually turned out to be the right answer, but still wasn't the right thing for me to do, was to accept it. I was just in desperation mode. I called my support staff. They hung up on me. And then out of desperation mode, I got someone pressuring me for the count. And this person says, Ganj, that they are at court. It was this one inmate. I didn't know where they were on the out count. But the desperation, the pressure of time to get that count done, and the fact that my support staff wasn't there, I got extremely, extremely nervous. And I remember in that moment, that pressure really shaking me a little bit. And I think when I'm looking back, I think that's when I can honestly say I definitely, even though I felt my confidence was sort of balanced, I definitely wasn't overconfident. It took one incident to shake my very foundation. And especially at the very beginning of my career where I'm vulnerable. Just that missing, couldn't get that number, couldn't find out where that inmate was. And then having the lieutenant pressure for the count. I realized how I guess, one, how pressure can make you fold pretty quick, but also, man, it made me question, am I ready for this? Because, when you're in the academy, they stress the importance of count. You don't want to mess it up. Now you got all these pressures coming in and you're getting all nervous. And then the first thing I did was accept what the inmate told me where the other inmate was. But, Joe, did you feel when you came in that you were a bit overconfident, or did you feel that maybe you would have maybe balanced, but if you had to lean in a direction, let's say and when I say lean, Joe, I mean the moment there's pressure coming your way, which way would you have leaned? Wind up, just going through it, overconfident, or would you have been a little bit more nervous?
No, definitely more nervous. Nothing's going to shake you worse than doing your first count by yourself, and it being off. I kind of remember the same thing, but what I found out later on was that the supervisor had actually pulled an inmate off of my cell block just to see if I was going to catch it during the count, or if I was just going to paper count it. And I remember turning in a count and hearing on the radio that the count was off, needed a recount. Recounted, my count was the same. We get 45 minutes into this count and pressure's coming. Key boss is yelling at me, "Hey, we need your count." You hear the sergeant and the lieutenant on the radio, "Hey, we need C-15's count. We need to know, what the hell's going on down there." And, so I don't know if it was instinctively, but I went on ahead and did a roster count and verified every inmate in the cell with their ID, and tracked it down to one inmate and told them on the radio who was not on my cell block. And, it was at that time that the lieutenant announced the count was clear. So that's when I knew I was being tested. But I'm telling you, that was the worst 45 minutes of my life, because I felt pressure coming from all different directions. It did shake me. It kind of pissed me off, but it shook me. But then I knew from that point on that, okay, if my count's not clear, I know that I'm going to do a roster count from this point on, and I'll be able to track it down pretty damn quick. So I would definitely say I came in probably pretty steady, but a little on the nervous side. And, everybody's going to go through that. They're going to have that shot of nervousness, and it may not just be a count. It could be as simple as you're on a cell block or a pod by yourself and you tell an offender to do something and he tells you no. There's your first conflict. How are we going to handle it? So everybody has that first moment in corrections. It's how you handle it, how you project yourself, is the way you overcome it.
Yeah, and I want to mention something. I love what you just said, because in that moment, actually, looking back, I'm shocked that I actually did listen to that inmate tell me where the other inmate was, but I was desperate. I didn't know how to resolve the problem. I had I was trying to go to that one officer who, unfortunately, so I didn't even know where to go to resolve the problem. And this was an instant solution because I had the pressure of time to go ahead and, add a little bit more flavor to that situation. And then I remember, just being able to get the answer, the count clearing. But then I'm smart enough to always look back and say, hey, that wasn't the right way to handle it. Because also I think when the inmates watch you at the very beginning, even if you want to portray confidence, they're going to see you don't have control. So, the picture doesn't work. It doesn't align. It just doesn't align. And then if you go in overconfident, and the reason why I know I didn't go in overconfident is because I always loved learning, loved listening to senior staff share their experiences with me. So I knew I came in humble. So I could definitely say I wasn't overconfident. But I did see people that did come in that were overconfident. And then what happened was, if they were challenged, they would wind up responding more aggressive, because now it's either an attack of their pride or it's a win-loss concern. But I felt that the overconfidence didn't work, because instead of them trying to find out what the answer was, one, they didn't want to admit that they even needed help. They didn't want to admit that they were vulnerable. They would match or go above in whatever the energy was. So like if I'm having a back and forth with you, Joe, and all of a sudden you start screaming at me, I'm going to overcompensate my authority now because, again, I'm just new. I'm overconfident. This is not a problem. Not knowing that I'm really have no control when I'm doing this. And now we're going back and forth and I'm getting louder and louder. And I remember, as I said, an officer taught me the best way to de-escalate a situation is first control. It's nothing about negotiation, none of this shit. It's just control of yourself, control of the situation. I mean, that's the key. And as I said, when you're coming in overconfident, I think overconfidence could connect to your pride. You want to impress when you're just not there yet. So that definitely pushes senior staff away. But also, I think it's a little funny for the inmates to see that. You know, you're coming in overconfident, but you obviously have no control. So now when we have this battle back and forth, in order for you to gain control, you overcompensate your authority. And what happens is you wind up crossing into aggressive attempts. And when you see someone that's aggressive, not assertive, aggressive, you figure there's a little level of emotion in there and a little less control. But I've seen that. So any thoughts on that, Joe, before we go to the next section?
Yeah, you know, and it's funny that you mentioned that because I've seen the same thing too. I had people in the same academy class I was in that were gung ho, overconfident, and the first time that they were challenged, it wasn't pretty because it became a pride thing, and they got really, really upset. And it's not a good thing to become overconfident, because if you're overconfident, then you're compensating for something that you don't have. And sooner or later, it's going to get found out. It's going to get brought to the surface. It's going to get checked. It's going to get challenged. So, it's best to be confident and humble at the same time, because of the fact that, being overconfident, again, just because you're wearing that uniform or just because you're wearing that badge, doesn't really make you special. The person behind it is what makes it special. And, if you come in overconfident and you come in arrogant, cocky, I found that a lot of the times, again, they were overcompensating for something they didn't have or something that they were scared of. Like they were trying to head something off before it actually happened. And, it never worked. There was always either a conflict, a pride moment. So being confident and being humble is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, and guys, remember, so before we get to the next part, this is the first few minutes you're walking in the facility. So your confidence, again, is not going to be inward. It's going to be support that comes through. So I think the first thing I try to figure out is, where's my support? Who can I go to? And that helped me pretty much navigate through this, very challenging profession, knowing that I had places to go in case I felt lost, instead of walking in thinking I could handle everything on my own. So I would say the first step that you would want to do as a rookie is try to find people that you can connect to who are going to help you kind of move forward. I'm not saying handhold you, but help you when you have questions that, you have concerns with, or you're looking to move forward. So again, confidence at the very beginning is going to be based on your support, what's around you, because at this point, you don't have enough positive experiences to really build confidence from. And I've seen people do that, guys. I've seen people that have come in, as we said, just extremely overconfident, trying to draw from something that they do not have. And then eventually they wind up burning themselves out, or they wind up considering themselves a failure because they can't meet to the challenge, because for some reason they think they got to do it alone. And that's not the case. And again, if we're peers or supervisors out there, I hope you understand what I just said. A lot of the rookies could get overwhelmed, because a big thing could be is that they put a lot of pressure on themselves, when at the end of the day is we all should be picking up some of that pressure for them at the very beginning. So if you got someone burned out and it's only a couple of days in, we should maybe try to see what's going on and see if there's anywhere we can help them out in. I want to move to the first month now. This is the reality check. So granted, this is more of just maybe now you're entering the profession. I'm sure at one point there's an expectation that you develop, whether in the academy or whatever it is that you're watching on the outside before you actually cross into that facility. And then through routine, through patterns, you start to understand that your expectation is a lot different than reality. So again, just some concerns you could deal with. Maybe your first inmate confrontation. So maybe you in your head you played out how you would react to that, and it just didn't work out the way you wanted it to, or you expect the inmate to react a certain way when you push your authority and it doesn't happen the way you want it to. So again, the environment, it just doesn't react the way you would like it to, and you yourself, because I know when I first started, I was thinking of scenarios in my head, and this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do, and then the moment it happens, it goes sideways, And the funny thing is, I know we always talk about playing the what if game. That's great, but mind you, the what if game is really to help you adapt and adjust, not to develop scripts. Because then what happens is when the situation goes sideways, you're going to fight to put things back to this script when that script no longer applies. So there's a balance there. And then maybe there could be a concern with that first emergency response when this is key. Your first emergency response when you realize how fast things escalate. And usually how fast it escalates is because, hey, we need a decision here. We need someone to lean into the challenge. And then you got maybe that first disciplinary action where you're learning to enforce the rules without taking things personally. So that's pretty much every day as a rookie where you're going to go in. And I always tell people as a rookie, you got to embrace conflict. You got to write up those little things because you got to get used to telling people no. And then you got to get used to some level of resistance or some level of being challenged. And, I think it's great for you to embrace that on day one. But a lot of people think that the officer gives the order and the inmates are going to accept it, and that's not the case. Or they believe it's a lot easier to do than it really is. I know some people may think it's crazy, but it's not that easy to tell somebody no, especially a grown adult. So that's something that I think people should give themselves a little bit more credit for. A good correctional officer has no problem saying no and then embracing the conflict that's going to come after that. A lot of people don't want to say no because they're afraid of the conflict that comes after the no, where us in corrections, we're ready to say no, and we're ready for the argument that's going to come right after that. I'm not looking here to be Mr. Popular. I'm here to do my job. And then you also have, you got to, this is learning the unspoken rules. So what's in policy book versus what actually happens on the floor. So in the academy, you're going to kind of get a script. But then again, when you go to the facility, you're going to see things a little bit differently and how it plays out. So there's always going to be some adjustments to policy and procedure to make sure it fits. Well, that's why you have higher level policies, and then you have lower level policies for the facility. Navigating staff dynamics, who to trust, who to avoid, and how to earn respect. And then you got the feedback from the veteran officers. This matters. So it's mentors versus tough love versus hazing. So you got good mentors, guide rookies, teaching them the ropes without discouraging them. Some officers have a sink or swim approach, and that's really not good on confidence at all because if you're a rookie and you're coming in, you're expected some level of connection. I don't want to, come in on day one and realize that people don't have my back and they're just allowing me to drown on day one. Just doesn't set a very good initial impression. And hazing is when does tough love become toxic for rookies? Some insights here I have is the first real test for rookies is how they respond to being challenged by inmates and by staff. Book knowledge only takes rookies so far. The ability to read situations in real time is key. That's the key. That's what I mentioned before about how fast an emergency response can escalate. That's why we want people to jump in and try to make decisions before it grows more complex. And the last thing I got here on this section is a toxic work culture can break a rookie before they even find their footing. There's a lot here, Joe. So, take your time. But what do you got here?
Yeah, this is where I say the honeymoon phase is over. The newness is gone. By this time, you should be assigned to a shift. You should know what your building schedule is for that shift. Be able to apply what's happening in that building schedule. This is where by this point in your career, within the first month, you should have already been through your first conflict, whether it be with an offender or staff. I remember, the first time that I had to rack an entire, cell block up and had to do a row by row, and, got to that top row and they didn't want to rack up. And, so I just kind of walked down the run and kind of nudged them into their cell one by one and shut the door. And I guess that was my test to see if I was going to, carry through with what my job duties were, being by myself on a tier up on 3-row, knowing that my backup is a couple of minutes out. That first month is crucial, because that's where you kind of find your inner self. That's where, by this time you should know whether or not you're going to be a confident officer or if you're going to be a nervous officer. Within the first month, you should see your first conflicts. I remember my first month, I've seen a lot of assaults, offender, inmate on inmate. Seen my first 4-cell move. There were a lot of things that were a first for me within that first month. But thankfully I was allowed to be part of all of them. So that kind of gave me a better insight as to what's going to happen. Maybe more confident about, Lieutenant calling down there and saying, "Hey, Pomponio, I need you to suit up. We're fixing to go in on this guy." After that first one, the confidence and your skill ability kind of starts to rise more and more. And you'll see yourself start to come out. You'll know, and your coworkers will see what kind of person you are, what kind of officer you are. If you're part of the team, willing to back them up, when things hit the fan. And, by this time, the offender population, you should see some level of respect if you've carried yourself correctly. As long as you're not the gung-ho that goes in hollering bitches and hoes and MFers and this, that, and the other. If you're the type of officer that can project your command presence, project your voice in a way that, is your communication is on point with these offenders, you'll know what kind of respect level that you have. And I've seen it again in the first month. I've seen it go both ways. I've seen it where, the offenders just straight buck these people because of being overconfident, being arrogant, being cocky. And I've seen I've seen the other side of it where, the officer wasn't quite confident yet. So the offenders kind of played on that. That's why it's so crucial to make sure by this point that you've kind of gotten you a compass, and you're following that compass and you stick to that line, to make sure that you project your command presence, make sure that you're projecting yourself in a way that's professional and that, makes the inmates understand that, you say what you mean and mean what you say.
Yeah, it's powerful. And I want to mention something too, guys. So at this point of your career, you're going to be dealing, I kind of within the first month, but, depending on how active the facility is, this could all happen in a couple of days. You're going to be put in situations where you have to make decisions, where you have to interact. And it's really, I know a lot of people may look at reaction and support. So basically I react and the support will tell me if I'm going the right way or not. But then there's also something else, how you cope with what you're dealing with too, because so these initial reactions are foundational because they're your initial reactions. These are what you're going to build off of as you develop in your career. So technically, if you're doing something wrong, and even if you don't pick it up, that's why the support staff's got to be there immediately on day one to help you, because the last thing they want is for that foundational step to be headed in the opposite direction. So I think they should be there to give you constructive feedback, but in the process, provide you with confidence and keep you in the direction you need to head in. Because at this point here, you're also setting the patterns of not just how you react to things, where you seek support as well, but also how you cope. And coping's a big part of it all too, because this kind of in this first month is where you start to see the concerns that either could break you or make you, and how you go through this at this time truly matters. But I still got to lean on that support as well, because again, you're dealing with a lot of concerns that are going to be new. if you're taking a chance and making a decision, you're trying to step into that role, and let's say the decision's the wrong way, I think support needs to be there and help you get through that bad decision, to let you know that, it's okay, and it's going to happen, and to keep you motivated to make more decisions, because your first failure could be a tremendous learning moment, or it could set you back where it could be your breaking point that you lean on when you decide to step away from this career, and not because you don't want to be in it, but because you feel you can't do it. That's why I feel like, again, if you got that support, they're going to make that failure into a learning point, and then you're able now to kind of take what's coming your way, build some level of resilience through those failures, because you're constantly learning. That's why it's good to kind of not go in overconfident, but go in with just, some level of vulnerability and wanting to learn, but also some level of competence in picking up the skills that have to be done so you could be effective. But the biggest thing here is, I think this is the point where you start stepping into the role you're trying, and it just doesn't always work out the way you want. And now you have to find that ground in how you're going to deal with the things that you cannot control, which most of the time are the outcomes that you want to produce. It's usually not in your control. It's usually in the other party's control. So, it's like Joe said, presence matters because you can influence it. 100% you can influence it, but you don't have total control of it. The only thing you have control of is how you react to the situations that you're in. And that's where support should help you balance that. Does that make sense, Joe, before we get on to the next one?
Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely makes sense, because I remember I had my first use of force on week 3 of my career. We were doing random pat searches during a mass child movement, and I called one offender to the center hall to do pat searched. He didn't want to come. So being overbearing, I reached out and grabbed his shirt and brought him to me, and which resulted in a use of force right there in the middle of the hallway. He swung on me and the fight was on. When the dust settled and things were done, I'll never forget my lieutenant who came to me. He goes, Officer JoJo, can you tell me where you fucked that up? Yes, sir. I'm pretty sure I can. And, so it was a good learning tool. It kind of grounded me, to understand that, you don't just reach out and put your hands on somebody, unless, there's something, drastic or emergent about it. Him coming back from chow me wanting a random pat search was not emergent, but it wound up emergent. But it was a good learning tool for me. It was a way to keep myself grounded. But at the same time, the offenders, from that point on knew when I called their name, I wasn't going to call it twice. So, it was a good learning tool for both sides.
Yeah. And guys, I want to make sure that you guys know that the confidence comes from the evaluated experience, the willingness to go back and kind of, go through what you've done and could have been done better. But I also want to make sure that you guys know that when you're looking at your experience, you're really looking at your effort, and you really got to be wary of how you judge yourself on outcomes that are produced, because some people get lucky and they wind up thinking that they're more successful than they really are. And some people just, they made a great decision. It just didn't go in their way. And then they forever get lost in an outcome that wasn't, their fault. It's just the situation. It happens, and it could happen to anyone. But at the very beginning of your career, it could be defining. I mean, it's funny. I make a mistake on day 1. Joe makes a mistake on day 25, or I'm sorry, on his 25th year. I'm destroyed by my mistake, and Joe's like, get over it. Because Joe has proven himself, and more importantly, not proven himself to others. He's proven himself to himself. That's the key. So Joe has found a standard where he's comfortable with after 25 years. He knows what he can and can't do. I'm at that point now as well. And if I fail at something that's outside my comfort zone, okay, I'll try to learn it, but that may not be where I excel, because I've done enough to know where my best experiences, where I'm best at, where I'm most effective. But yeah, I think I just want to make sure we, that when this is that point where you start to develop that pattern, where that breaking point, because the breaking point does start to come next. You got to make sure that you're reacting, yes, but I want to make sure we put that word cope in there. We're coping. How are we coping with the stuff that we could see as negative, and maybe work to make it a teachable moment. All right, so the next thing here, Joe, I got. Now, this is where your confidence begins to shake, because now, mind you, guys, we talked briefly before about the initial interactions that don't go as planned, but what about if it becomes more routine, where it's just, trial by fire sort of? So this usually happens within the first 3 months. You're talking about confidence being shaken. So rookies' mistakes and how they affect their confidence. We kind of touched on it, but now it becomes more foundational, because it's not just initial, but now it's more routine. So common mistakes that lower confidence: missing security checks or failing to follow protocols, getting flustered under pressure, as I mentioned before. So even inmate aggression, radio calls, etc. account. Trusting the wrong inmate or being too lenient. And look what I said here: trusting the wrong inmate. What do I mean by trust? Sometimes, guys, it doesn't mean that you're having a dialogue and you trust the inmate. How about you don't do a certain part of your job because, maybe I didn't check the security because I thought everything was okay. So complacent habits could also relay that you trust the inmate too much. Or the inmate comes up and says, hey, can I go talk to my friend? It's only going to be a second, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be real quick. And you wind up letting them do it. Now, if I said, well, you let the inmate do that? Yeah, I made a mistake. So at that moment, did you trust the inmate? You did. So it's funny how a lot of people will quickly say they don't trust inmates, but then you're thinking about it. Yeah, you may want to say that generally, but there are moments by moments where you do. However, you may not trust them as a person, but you're trusting their actions moment by moment. So remember, what you give them the okay for, whatever it is, that you're giving them a trust in that moment. Doesn't mean you trust who they are, but in that moment you trusted them. How rookies handle disrespect, that matters. I wanted to put that in there. Realizing that inmates really don't care how new you are. They're going to come at you, challenge you. They're going to call you out. They're going to mock you. They're going to ignore you. I think the big thing here is they're going to want to see how you maintain your authority. I think that's really big when you're new. They're going to test your consistency through persistence. They're going to test your consistency through persistence. And the moment of self-doubt is questioning if this is for you, the rookies, is when you get that moment of self-doubt, what are you saying in your head? Is it motivating you forward, or is it setting you back? So I got the internal struggles too, how rookies process embarrassment, fear of failure. I think embarrassment may be the worst. I could fail and recover from it. But I could admit even a moment got to me. I have no problem admitting a moment got to me. But if somewhere under the umbrella, I feel embarrassed by it, that's more of an attack of pride, attack of ego. You got to get over the fact of being embarrassed. At the end of the day, it's superficial. The mental battle, am I doing the right thing versus am I in over my head? And some rookies shut down or avoid conflict while others overcompensate and become too aggressive. And we talked about that. And the key insights I have for this, Joe, is every rookie will make mistakes. So it's how they handle them that determine growth. Authority is more about consistency and composure than physical presence or aggression. And confidence is tested in moments of failure and not success. And I love that. But Joe, this area here, I think within the first 3 months, probably less, depending on, I think how active that individual's involved. This is where there could be the breaking points. This could be where they start to get hit by situations, and now it's a matter of how they react that will either keep them motivated or start turning them to where they just don't think that they're good enough. What's your thoughts on all of this, Joe?
Yeah, it's pretty. This part of the experience is a crucial time. By this time you probably have already been tried by an offender. You've probably already been tried by one of your staff members or one of your coworkers. It's one where most of it, if there was any ridicule whatsoever from the offender population, because every officer gets some sort of ridicule at some point, when they're new. I remember specifically, working a cell block, and, one guy wanted to come out after I've already rolled the doors, and I wouldn't let him out. I'd already put the offenders in the day room, and I was going on, with my duties. And I remember him throwing a cussing fit, and he screamed through the whole cell block, "I'm a grown ass man. I'm a grown ass man." And I just remember replying. I said, "Well, God damn it, act like a grown ass man." And the whole cell block kind of went quiet. And I realized what I said, and I was like, "Oh shit, did I just say that?" And it was that pretty much at that point that the inmates knew that I was going to treat them fairly. But they were still giving me the ridicule. The ones in the day room were giving me the ridicule. But once that was said, the ridicule for me was over. They knew that the game was over. They knew, by that point, I said what I meant what I said, and I was going to go on, with my job duties. During this portion here, whether you see your first staff assault, I remember seeing my first staff assault within 3 months. Was a hard bite for me to take. Witnessed my first homicide within 3 months. Remember seeing a Mexican mafia member get his guts tore open on the rec yard and thrown up in the razor wire. And, that was pretty damn unsettling to me, especially by this point, you're going to start seeing things that, you've been told about, but never really witnessed. Things that you've heard about, things that you thought was folklore. And, you're going to start witnessing things, that you were told could happen and actually do happen. Again, it's all on how you process it. It's one of those where any given situation can either make you confident and give you the abilities to learn from what took place, why it took place. Was there something you could have done better? Or it's one of those where it makes you second guess your career. It can shake you. From that point on, you start having self-doubt. If you want to do this job, if you really want to be here, am I going to find another job? This is a pretty crucial point in anybody's career when it comes to corrections. Because again, by this point, you should have the building blocks. You should have the mentoring. You should be probably on a duty post on your own at this point, and the whole show's on you. And again, the way you project yourself, if you project yourself with confidence, with a good command presence, I think it will work out to benefit you more. I've seen a lot of officers quit within the first 3 to 4 months because it was one of those where, and on an exit interview, they told me, he said, "Well, I really wanted this job. The money's good. The benefits were great. But my body was ready for something that my mind was not." So, which is, and that was powerful to me. I've never heard anybody on an exit interview put it that way. And it made perfect sense. And I totally got it, totally understood it. Not everybody's going to process things the same. Not everybody's going to see a scenario and be able to process it in a way that it's still, they still have their confidence intact, their ability to react intact. There are just certain things about this job that make or break you. And, again, the way you deal with it, the way you cope with it, the way you interact with your coworkers about it, like with that homicide, I was like, I asked, most of my coworkers the next day, I was like, "Does this kind of shit happen all the time?" And they're like, "No, this is kind of a one-off kind of deal. You just happen to be out there on the rec yard when it happened." And, so I was like, okay, because I really did second guess myself after witnessing that homicide, me being out there on the rec yard by myself with nothing but a radio and one perimeter tower above me. So, there are going to be things that happen, that it should have happened not necessarily homicide or a suicide, but you may witness an assault. You may witness one of your coworkers getting hurt. Something that makes you have some sort of self-reflection into, damn, that could be me, or damn, that happened. It's all in the way that you deal with it. And I'll never forget. I had a coworker tell me after witnessing that homicide, after escorting this guy that committed the homicide to segregation, covered in blood. I remember my coworker telling me, he said, "Man, don't let this shake you. Make sure you have your ass here tomorrow for shift." And, I'm not going to lie. I went home that night and talked to my wife at the time. And I was really second guessing myself. And I was only 3 months in. I decided to go back that next day for whatever reason. And once I stepped foot on that facility, I knew this is where I belonged. I knew this is what I wanted to do. I knew I was there for a reason. I knew I needed to be there. I knew that my coworkers needed me to be there. And I knew I needed to be there for my coworkers. So, it's all in how you process it. It's all about mindset.
Yeah. Now for the next one, guys, it's growth and adaptation. So it's in the next 3 months, 3 to 6 months. But guys, now we're in the turning point area where you're either gonna, make it through the doubt, or you're gonna get absorbed by the doubt. And I want to mention something that crosses into this too that I didn't put in here, but it's true. You have to recognize successes as well, however small they may be. I know, like, if I was your support officer and let's say you had a negative interaction out of, the examples I give, I may come up and say, hey, it may not went well with inmate Joe, but man, how you handled the inmate the other day went well. You want people to make sure that, I could get caught up in my failure with Joe, that I take on the responsibility of Joe being an asshole in that moment. And that's not what it was about. It's just Joe was an asshole. Nobody can manage him. But man, the way you stepped up and managed Russ, that was great. He responded well. And because Russ was more open to allow that influence to occur. But the successes matter. The small successes at the very beginning matter, because you're going to have to lean on those. And what I mean by success is, again, not success driven by the outcome, but success driven by the effort to step up. Step up. That for me is key. Just step up. Yeah, okay. So let's figure the rest out. But you stepped up. So I think it's knowing that, as you're going through this, you got to find some level of successes, because you have to lean on something. And that's where the support staff could also come in, because sometimes as rookies, we're so judgmental of ourselves that we'll minimize successes and really put a lot of weight on small mistakes. And the problem is, we need someone to shift our focus and say, hey, you're spending a lot of time on this, but you're forgetting that the other day you did A, B, C, D. When I did that count that I talked about the other day, when I did that count that we talked about momentarily, earlier today in the show, the one I did, years ago as a rookie, I wasn't happy with the outcome of that, because I didn't like how I resolved it. I didn't like giving the inmate the trust in the moment, because I was desperate. And that weighed on me a lot, because there was a lot that I had told myself I was never going to do. But then all of a sudden, the desperation of the moment, I wind up, listening to that inmate. Now, granted, a lot of people again, it's not that big of a deal. It was for me. It was day one. It was within the first couple of days. So it was for me. I know now, maybe casually, some people may say, hey, where's that inmate? That I get it. But day one, I want to get the practice of going to my support first, until I have an understanding of, the questions and answers I'm supposed to get, let alone, trying to get them from the inmate population. That's not what my goal is. But the next day, when I knew where inmates could be, I figured out my next count, and I took a moment of success in that. So I needed that failure, because if I didn't have that failure, I wouldn't recognize the success the next day in taking that count, or at least the value of that success. So it all balances out somehow. Failures and success are partnered. Okay, so I got some examples here for growth and adaptation. Obviously, there could be many areas where you can grow and adapt and adjust to, but recognizing patterns in inmates. So now let's say you're at that point where you have a lot of concerns that you feel you could do better with, and then we tend to not look at the stuff, the small little things that we're actually getting better at, because we're too focused on the negative. So these are just reminders. Maybe recognizing patterns in inmates' behavior, learning to predict manipulative tactics and test strategies, identifying red flags before incidents escalates, finding your voice, like Joe said before, developing command presence without needing to yell or intimidate, or learning how to de-escalate without looking weak. Building situational awareness, knowing when to stand your ground versus when to step back. Developing instinct, reacting faster and smarter in tense situations, and earning respect from staff and inmates, gaining credibility by showing consistency, fairness, and confidence, and balancing being approachable and maintaining professional boundaries. And the insight here is that, now remember, guys, this is the turning point. This is how you react, how you battle through the doubt. So you're looking for those small wins. True confidence comes from experience, not arrogance. Ain't that what Joe said before? The best correctional officers learn to read people, not just policies, and respect is built through actions, not demands. And I think that matters. As we said before at the beginning, you come in overconfident, you overcompensate, and the one thing you don't have is control. And I've never seen officers or inmates, supervisors, admin, respect someone who can't control a unit, who can't control the environment at some level. Joe, what's your thoughts on the ability to adapt and adjust, but also now crossing into where those little successes matter, because you're at that point where you can turn either way?
Yeah, by this point, you should have some sort of respectability, amongst the inmate population. You should have respectability for yourself. You should have, some sort of confidence for yourself by this point. Because this is a great turning point. My 3 to 6 months were probably the best for me, because by this time I knew who I was. By this time I knew what kind of officer I was going to be. I knew what kind of officer I was and can be. I was doing things that was not really, I don't want to say getting me noticed by other staff members. But I was taking, like Anthony said, I was taking the small wins. The first time I had to run a chow hall by myself, the first time that, I responded to a code, with a team. And just small things that were successful, and that I took as a win. And when you take those small wins, this is where you're gaining your experience. This is where you're gaining your confidence in yourself to do the job. By this point, your brain should already be in the mindset that, I know how to do this job. I can do this job. I'm gonna do this job. And this is where your growing point is, because then, for me, it was probably, I'd say anywhere between 3 and I'd say 9 months. Already had a vision, already knew that I wanted to learn everything that I could possibly learn. I wanted to excel at my job. I wanted a piece of everything. I wanted to be on the CERT team. I wanted to be a field force officer. I wanted to be a shakedown officer. I wanted to be a response officer. I wanted to be a transport officer. My mind was focused on so much growth that was in front of me that I could tap into. It overwhelmed. I don't want to say overwhelmed, but it overtook any bad feelings that I had about the job within my first 3 months. Because I knew that there was other avenues, eventually that I could go if I wanted to. So, at this point, this is, I don't want to say the make or break, but you should be on the make it part by this point. This is, like I said, this is where you have done almost all the jobs on the facility. Most of the jobs on the facility, I should say. You should have the ability to, be able to manage the inmate population in certain pods and certain sections, and navigate your way through communication, through commands, through the ability to maintain order within your assigned area by yourself. There's a lot of, you may not think, and for me, and I'll put it bluntly, the lieutenant I was assigned to when I first hit a facility worked me on a cell block every day. Every day I knew I was catching a cell block. And then I finally, one day I asked the lieutenant, and I'll never forget his answer. Lieutenant Gallegos. I said, LT, how come I never get to see a dorm? How come I never get to see an outside picket? How come I never, and he just kind of looked at me over his glasses. He said, because of the way you run that damn cell block, he said, I'll never put you anywhere but that cell block. He said, you have a way of maintaining order. You keep the noise down. You keep the day rooms orderly. You do such a good job down there. And, here the whole time I was thinking I was being punished. And it was the fact that, I was actually maintaining the cell block environment so well. They wanted me to stay down there. So communication, and I'm not just talking about for the rookies. I'm talking about for the supervisors of these rookies. If they're doing something right, tell them, because I'm telling you, it's easy for them to get the wrong picture. So, for the rookies, at this point in your career, you should already be in the mindset that, I can do this job and I'm going to do this job.
Yeah. Before we get to the key factors that shape confidence, there's two more categories left. The key factors that shape confidence we're going to kind of touch on external support, but you want to hear something funny. So when you're new, your perspective could be a bit skewed, and that's fine. You have inexperienced eyes, so you're filtering things. Like I see things a lot differently now than I would as a rookie. I mean, I see things a lot differently now as management than I would as a senior officer. I mean, your experience is a filter. But I remember something, and I think this plays out in this dialogue. I don't know if I ever shared this. So I actually had a pretty good experience as a rookie for the most part. I had good support officers for the most part. But there were moments, trust me. And I knew who I was going into this profession. So I always tell people, you got to know who you are, especially even now when I'm management, I'm interviewing people. I want to know how confident this person is, because that's the foundation of somebody. So you got to know who you are. But there was a moment when I knew who I was, but I didn't know who I should be in this profession. I remember that. There was a moment where I was working in Max at the female facility, and the interactions with some of the females and the officers were a bit unique. They were aggressive. They were just, just bitter exchanges, just nasty. And on both sides, just back and forth, it's nasty. Just, B words being thrown out left and right, just personal attacks, all this stuff, just going back and forth. And I remember watching this and like thinking, I can't do this for 25 years. I can't be doing that for 25 years. Now, granted, I did see positive interactions, which actually I wind up leaning towards anyway. But I just remember I was like, I can't do this. And I remember telling my wife, I said, hey, I don't know, man, because when you have these actions that are so aggressive on one side, just by you coming up and telling an inmate, hey, I hope your day's going good. Oh, you're an inmate lover. It's like, no, I'm just not an inmate hater. I guess, I've never been. I mean, I do believe we got rules to follow. The same thing I am with my officers, same thing I am with the inmates. But when you have an environment that's so extreme in that negativity, just a simple good day becomes you're talking too much or whatever it was. And I say, hey, I can't even do this. I mean, I feel every interaction is being questioned because I'm not as extreme as them. And I don't want to be that extreme. And my perspective was so skewed because for one moment, briefly, I thought that's who I had to be. And I felt that I didn't have the potential to be that. So now I start getting this self-doubt, not based on, anything real, just because of what I saw and what I thought I had to be, my own doubt, my own inexperience, until someone came in and said, hey, Gandy, you don't want to be like them, and you're not supposed to be like them. So sometimes your own inexperience can give you doubt. And it could be a perspective that really is the wrong perspective. So I got caught in that doubt briefly. And to be honest with you, that doubt really, man, if that doubt took me out of this profession, I wouldn't be where I was at now. And that doubt had nothing to do with who you're supposed to be. It was a perspective I thought, because I saw people doing it. Okay, so I got key factors here, shape confidence. So you got the external factors that we talk about that could build or break confidence. So you got the right mentorship or training. So having a strong mentor accelerates confidence. I like that. And the dangers of being assigned to a toxic shift or a negative coworker can speed it backwards, can take it away. And by the way, building confidence takes a lot longer than losing it. So I could spend all day working with Joe, who's building my confidence all day, and then the next day I'm working with Russ, let's say, and Russ destroys me. And I've seen this happen. So I lose my confidence really quick. And I've seen training officers go to that officer and said, dude, you're fucking me up. I've been working on this rookie for the last, couple of days trying to get him where he's got to go. And then you, in 1 second, destroyed everything I've done. And that's when you know that senior officer, that training officer is not just spending time with that rookie, they're investing time. And when you invest time in somebody, when I can spend time with everybody, but when I invest in you, that's personal. And if someone fucks up that momentum, and ask anybody, I'm going to chase that person down, because now you're stepping on my time. So I got how rookies handle criticism, so constructive feedback versus getting discouraged too easily, and the work environment support system, working in a supportive team versus being surrounded by negativity. So key insight here, Joe, is confidence is contagious. So rookies who are surrounded by strong officers develop faster. Correctional officers who can take constructive criticism without defensiveness grow the fastest. And the job doesn't break most rookies. The people around them do. Now, that's powerful. I want to say that again. The job doesn't break most rookies. The people around them do. I remember my lieutenant also telling me this. Hey, Ganji, the funny thing is the people that actually are doing the job, that actually made it this far, aren't always the best. They just didn't get killed with self-doubt. Sometimes the people that could be the best, have great potential, wind up getting so overwhelmed with self-doubt that they'll never meet that great potential. So all because all these people here made it, it's only because some of them were just persistent. They didn't give up. But Joe, the job doesn't break most rookies. People around them do. Hey, Joe, what's your thoughts on all that for the key factors?
Absolutely. The one thing I found, as a rookie officer, that being assigned to a toxic shift, where the leadership's poor, where the officers are just so run down that all you hear is complaining. Calling rates are through the roof. Being stuck in that environment rubs off on you pretty damn quick. Negativity spreads just as quick as positivity.
I'd say quicker, Joe.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I would say quicker. But I also found that being assigned to a shift where things are smooth, where things run orderly, everybody comes to work. You don't hear the bitching and complaining during shift mount or shift briefings. The supervisor's engaged, part of the shift. Being assigned to a shift like that was a night and day difference from being assigned to a toxic shift. Being on a toxic shift can pull you down. It just wears you smooth out, to the point where, you don't even want to go to work. I've seen it all, but what I can tell you is that, outside influences other than your personal confidence, there are going to be things that you hear, that you see, that can wear down on you. The biggest thing is, don't focus on the negativity. Don't listen to it. Their complaining has nothing to do and has no influence and no bearing on the way you do your job. As long as you do your job, there shouldn't be anything else outside of that should influence you or that you should care about. But with that said, being assigned to a toxic shift does have many disadvantages, more than it has advantages. And being assigned to a shift where, there's a good line of communication, where people are engaged with each other. There's a lot of positives to that as well. The main thing is, be your own person. Don't let outside influences change the way you do your job. Don't let somebody's negativity change your job pattern, the way you carry yourself, the way you engage with the inmate population, the way you progress in your job skills. Don't, that letting somebody else bring you down is not going to do you any justice.
Yeah, and guys, when it comes with negativity too, it's intentional effort in corrections to see positivity. I'll tell you, it requires intentional effort to shift perspective, and a lot of people just like to accept what it is. And negativity, 100% will travel quicker because it's what people accept. But when someone comes in and says something positive, that takes intentional effort. That means I'm looking somewhere different than everyone else is, and I'm trying to maintain that momentum. That's why when you have that training officer talking to that rookie and they're trying to spend something, say something positive and keep the person going, it takes a lot of effort, man, to do that, to shift the person's perspective and keep them there, and then try to make sure there's no counter influence that's going to put that person to the negative, because that training officer's got to kind of move them because everything wants to go this way. But once they go negative, that's what the head's used to going. There's such a struggle pushing the person to see the opposite way. Last part I got here is just some final takeaways. Key messages for rookies. Confidence is earned through experience, not something that happens overnight. Expect to fail, expect to struggle, expect to have doubt. But you have to push through it. Don't let a bad day define your ability to succeed in the job. Practical tips and just building confidence is find a mentor. You could even find stuff that not even at your facility. You got social media now, Facebook groups. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Learn from mistakes without being too hard on yourself. That's key. Stay professional and consistent. Surround yourself with the right people. And remember, guys, confidence in corrections earned, not given. Growth happens in discomfort. Growth happens in discomfort. Rookies must embrace the challenge. The strongest officers never stop learning. Guys, that means that when you're dealing with the self-doubt, that could be part of the struggle that you have to push through so you can take it to that next level. Hey, Joe, anything you'd like to say in closing? This was a good dialogue. Hopefully this helps people from making the right decision during that turning point.
Yeah, being a rookie officer is hard. It's one where you're trying to find yourself, you're trying to find others, you're trying to make your way, you're trying to pave your path. Don't be in such a rush to be that person overnight. Respect and confidence and experience comes with time. It comes with making failures. It comes with making positives. A lot of this, for the first 6 months is trial and error. Even if you do have a bad day, even if you do make a mistake, don't let it define you as, I'm a shit sorry officer. That's not the case. Everybody's experience came from trial and error. Everybody's experience came from making mistakes, me included. I based my career off of all my mistakes. And what I learned from them, I made sure that my officers didn't do. So don't be quick to judge yourself. Don't be quick to, be full of self-doubt. And don't count yourself out. You got plenty of time ahead of you. The first 6 months of a year is probably the hardest, for an officer, for a rookie officer. I know it was for me. And I did have times where, I second guessed myself. But thankfully I had a damn good support system. I had supervisors that believed in me. I had coworkers and field training officers, which I still talk to the field training officer that trained me to this day. I talk to her every day. And, and still being in contact with her brings me back to those times where, you know, I made those mistakes and she got my ass, and I made sure I didn't make that mistake again. But it was her training, and her, you know, her guidance, her, you know, her resilience into whatever she's seen in me, that made me who I was. So don't ever count yourself out. You got plenty of time. Learn from your mistakes. You know, be confident in what you do. And you know, always project a positive attitude. Having a positive attitude in what you do at some point is going to stop the ones that are always negative. They'll take their negativity somewhere else. So, you know, spread as much positivity as you can, while you're, you know, being confident. Don't be arrogant, but be confident, and, you know, do your job to the best of your ability. If you make a mistake, trust me, it's not the end of the world. We will get past it. So, you know, don't condemn yourself over one mistake. Trust me, you'll have a career full of mistakes. And, you know, again, you know, mistakes and errors and mess ups, that's how and where we gain our experience.
Yeah. And guys, I want to mention something real quick. You know, anything new is going to be challenging, you know, but I always tell people you got to kind of know what you want or where you need to be so you're never truly lost. Like, I think that when you go through these challenges and not knowing what you could take from them and not knowing how this will apply to something greater, when you get lost, you truly will be lost because you don't have a direction. But sometimes, you know, you could go through these negative moments and you could maybe feel lost for a moment, but then you start to realize, hey, I can utilize this. I can utilize this because I know where I want to be. I mean, think about policies and procedures in prison. I mean, you think they work the first time? No, they get reinvented and reinvented. But there's an idea. The prison knows what it wants to do, but you got to trial and error until you figure it out. And I think that's what happens because trust me, if you expect policies to pass the first time, they don't. They just don't. It's a trial and error process. So, but we keep on trying. We push past the doubt and we do what we can to make it work. And I'm asking you to do the same for yourself. Just like we would do for the facility, do the same for yourself. Push past the doubt that usually comes with that first failure and take it as a learning lesson to now see what you have to fix to move on to the next step of your career. And as I said, guys, I've been through it. Now I'm in prison management, and I still go through moments where I think I'm an imposter sometimes. I see younger bucks coming in, and they can maneuver through all the technology stuff, and I'm still doing things the old way where you sat down with people and you figured it out. But it's not always the quickest way. It's tough to get everybody in the same room, and you see everybody moving so much quicker, and, you know, you're like, man, you know, you start questioning your own effectiveness. But then there's that moment where, you know, it does work because emails become confusing. You got to have those meetings, and then that's where you shine. So, I mean, there's always going to be a moment. But, you know, I thought this was a good dialogue. I just wanted to make sure that we shared our thoughts, and hopefully, and the key for this dialogue is to keep you motivated during these tough times, knowing it's okay to go through doubt. But what's not okay is to give up on yourself. Because at the end of the day, if you really want to be in this profession and you let the doubt kind of take you down the wrong path, you're giving up on what you want to do. That's nobody's fault but yours. I'm sorry. That's a choice that you made. So, as always, guys, the show is tipped up. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify every time I post a video. Stay safe.